Welcome to lecture number 23. Now we will start the topic of budgetary planning. As you all know that one of management's major responsibilities is planning. As explained in the previous lectures, planning is the process of establishing company-wide objectives. A successful organization makes both long-term and short-term plans. These plans establish the objectives of the company and the proposed way of accomplishing them. For example, if we take, uh, let's talk about a company which is a new entrant in the production of ceiling fans. अब वो जो company जो है once it has entered into the industry, so obviously it will have set some uh, goals. It will have uh, set some objectives that it has to meet in the short run and in the long term. So that planning part is, the main factor which determines the success or failure of any business venture. A budget is a formal written statement of management's plans for a specified future time period expressed in financial terms. So from this statement, we can gather the fact that a budget will always be in financial terms. It will always have a financial figure attached to it. For example, if we talk about the sales budget, हम कहते हैं एक company है which wants to achieve sales of $20,000 in the next month. Now that is a budgetary figure. Why? Because they have forecast how much and they have set what they want to achieve, and it is in financial terms. It represents the primary method of communicating agreed upon objectives throughout the organization. Once adopted, a budget becomes an important basis for evaluating performance. It promotes efficiency and serves as a deterrent to waste and inefficiency. Once adopted, a budget becomes an important basis for evaluating performance. This we will study in detail as we move on. होता ये है कि if you are the manager of your department and if you have set a budget, so you can use that budget to gauge the performance of your employees against the set target. So budget can become a very significant and a very appropriate tool to measure the performance. At the same time, it can also serve as a deterrent to waste and inefficiency. If you know the targets that you have to meet, or you feel that you will have to up your game in order to achieve those targets, so obviously your performance will become more efficient, and the factor of wastage within the department will become less and less. Budgeting and accounting. Accounting information makes major contributions to the budget process. From the accounting records, companies can obtain historical data on revenues, costs, and expenses. These data are helpful in formulating future budget goals. Obviously, when you are budgeting, so you are forecasting. You are saying, okay, for the next financial period, this is what we have to achieve. So when you are setting that figure, you will make use of the historical data that you have, data related to revenue, data related to profit, to cost, to expenses. For example, आप कहते हैं कि हमारी जो cost of goods sold है, वो इतनी है for this period. So you can forecast using this historical data कि what will it be for the next financial period. Normally, accountants have the responsibility for presenting management's budgeting goals in financial terms. In this role, they translate management's plans and communicate the budget to employees throughout the company. They prepare periodic budget reports that provide the basis for measuring performance and comparing actual results with plan objectives. The budget itself and the administration of the budget, however, are entirely management responsibility. अब होता है कि as an accountant, once you have gathered the data that can be useful in preparing a budget, and once you have made the budget, so how that budget will be administered and what sort of responsibilities will be given related to that budget, that is entirely up to the management. So accountant की job ये है कि they can, you know, make the budgets, but how you meet those targets and how you go about meeting those targets is the management's responsibility. The benefits of budgeting. The primary benefits of the budgeting are it requires all levels of management to plan ahead and to formalize goals on a recurring basis. So when we say it requires all levels of management to plan ahead, so when the whole management is involved, you know, on a daily basis, on a monthly basis, or even on an yearly basis, so obviously throughout the management हर एक का feedback और हर एक का अपना input होता है related to how the company should proceed for the next financial term. So that is a very important benefit of budgeting. Everyone gets involved in it. It provides definite objectives for evaluating performance at each level of responsibility. When you have set the budget, obviously फिर आपने everyone is given responsibility related to it. So you can use that performance, and you can use that responsibility that has been set to evaluate the performance. It creates an early warning system for potential problems so that management can make changes before things get out of hand. If your budget is for 1 year and you see after 4 months के आपका जो sales target है, for example, it is not what it should be, so you can you know, immediately take steps to rectify it rather than to take decisions at the wrong time, and that can, you know, really affect the performance of the company. So if you take decisions on time, it will always give a positive push to the company's performance. It facilitates the coordination of activities within the business. It does this by correlating the goals of each segment with overall company objectives. Thus, company can integrate production and sales promotion with expected sales. Obviously, when you have set ke how much sales you want to have, or how much sales you foresee for the next financial period, तो उसके हिसाब से आप you will have to take care of your production and promotion of sales promotion. So everything gets correlated and everything gets synchronized when you make the budget. It results in greater management awareness of the entity's overall operations and impact on operations of external factors such as economic trends. Obviously, आपने budget तो बना लिया, अब जो outside factors हैं, they can affect the performance, and if they affect the performance, they will ultimately affect the uh, goals that you have set. So उससे आपको clear idea होता है, management becomes aware of factors and what sort of an effect those factors can have. It motivates persons throughout the organization to meet planned objectives. A budget is an aid to management. It is not a substitute of management. A budget cannot operate or enforce itself. Companies can realize the benefits of budgeting only when managers carefully administer budget. So once you have set the budget, so then managers have to play a very important and vital role to achieve those targets. Essentials of effective budgeting. Effective budgeting depends on a sound organizational structure. In such a structure, authority and responsibility for all phases of operations are clearly defined. Budgets based on research and analysis are more likely to result in realistic goals that will contribute to the growth and profitability of a company. And the effectiveness of a budget program is directly related to its acceptance by all levels of management. Obviously, Joe, if you make a budget which is based on research and analysis, so the figures that you will incorporate into your budget will be, you know, more realistic and achievable. If your budget is not based on research and analysis, so जो figures आप set करेंगे, maybe वो realistic नहीं होंगे. और obviously जितना आपकी मैनेजमेंट बजट को एक्सेप्ट करती है, उतना ज्यादा इफेक्टिव योर बजट विल बी, because if the management has accepted the goals that have been set, so they will, you know, work towards achieving those goals. Once adopted, the budget is an important tool for evaluating performance. Managers should systematically and periodically review variations between actual and expected results to determine their causes. However, individuals should not be held responsible for variations that are beyond their control. बहुत से आपकी जो budget में deviation आएगी, वो as we move on, we will see that is not in the control and hands of the management or the personnel dealing with that budget. So you will have to be very pragmatic when you are trying to determine the effects of deviating away from the goals. Length of the budget period. A budget may be prepared for any period of time. आपके budget normally हो सकता है 1 month, 3 months, 6 months. Normal budget is for 1 year. The annual budget is in turn is often supplemented by monthly and quarterly budget. If you have set your budget for 1 year, so in order to supplement it to make it more achievable, you can also set monthly targets, or you can set quarterly targets to achieve the 1 year program. Many companies use continuous 12 months budgets. These budgets drop the month, just edit and add a future month. One advantage of continuous budgeting is that it keeps a management planning a full year ahead. So if you have a continuous 12-month budget, so you will always have something to focus on to. और आपका जो नया month होगा, obviously that will again become a part of your 12-month budget. So that gives the management control over the performance of the company, and they can look for ways to improve it if it's not up to the mark. The budgeting process. The development of the budget for the coming year generally starts several months before the end of the current year. Obviously, if you're making a budget for, let's say, year 2021, and we are in year 2020 right now, so if you're planning for the next financial period, you will obviously start in advance. You will look at the goals that you want to set. You will have to set plans against those goals. So obviously, budgeting process is a long process. This process you cannot do simply in a couple of days. You need ample time. The management needs ample time to make the budgeting process. Past performance is often the starting point from which future budget goals are formulated. The budget is developed within the framework of a sales forecast. This forecast shows potential sales for the industry and the company's expected share of such sales. Sales forecasting involves a consideration of various factors. When we talk about sales forecast, so we should also look at the general economic conditions. If the uh, world economy is in recession, so obviously the budget that you set should be set keeping in mind the economic situation of the world. इंडस्ट्री ट्रेंड्स आपके क्या हो सकते हैं? मार्केट रिसर्च स्टडीज, एंटिसिपेटेड एडवर्टाइजिंग एंड प्रमोशन, आपका व्हाट वाज योर प्रीवियस मार्केट शेयर. सो ऑल दीज फैक्टर्स कंट्रीब्यूट टू the budgeting process. In small companies, budgeting process is often informal. In larger companies, a budget committee has the responsibility for coordinating the preparation of the budget. Budgeting and human behavior. In developing the budget, each level of management should be invited to participate. This bottom to top approach is referred to as participative budgeting. One advantage of participating budgeting is that low level managers have more detailed knowledge of their specific area and thus are able to provide more accurate budgetary estimates. Why they have more detailed knowledge? Because they are the ones who are dealing with the basics and the nitty gritty of the business every day. So they have a much better and clear understanding of the way things are. Also, when lower level managers participate in the budgeting process, they are more likely to perceive the resulting budget as fair. The overall goal is to reach agreement on a budget that managers consider fair and achievable, but that also meets the corporate goals set by the top management. So, budgeting जो है, it should be a balance between the feedback and the input of the lower management and the goals which have been set by the top management. दोनों के मुनासबत में रख के you should always make the budgets. When this goal is met, the budget will provide positive motivation for the managers. In contrast, if managers view the budget as unfair and unrealistic, they may feel discouraged and uncommitted to budget goals. So ये है आपका flow of budget data under participative budgeting. You start from the lower management. जो department managers हैं, they give feedback to the plant managers जो उनके supervisor हैं. They in return give feedback to the reporting line, और जो आपका vice president of production है वो आपको directly will coordinate with the president. For example, at one time, in an effort to revive its plummeting stock, Time Warner Stock Management determined and publicly announced bold new financial goals for the coming years. What they did, they were unable to achieve those goals. So the next year, they decided to make realistic goals, and they were able to achieve it. Participative budgeting does, however, have potential disadvantages. First, the give and take of participative budgeting is time consuming and thus more costly under a top-down approach. The budget is simply developed by top management and then dictated to lower level managers. A second disadvantage is that participative budgeting can foster budgetary gaming through budgetary slack. Budgetary slack occurs when managers intentionally underestimate budgeted revenues or overestimate budgeted expenses in order to make it easier to achieve budgetary goals. So budgetary slack is when you tamper with the data. For example, आपकी जो revenue है उसको you try to underestimate, and expenses you overestimate in order to set goals which are easy to achieve. To minimize budgetary slack, higher level managers must carefully review and thoroughly question the budget projections provided to them by employees whom they supervise. For the budget to be effective, top management must completely support the budget. The budget is an important basis for evaluating performance, as I've told you. Now, budgeting and long range planning. Budgeting and long range planning are not the same. One important difference is the time period involved. The maximum length of a budget is usually 1 year, and the budgets are often prepared for shorter periods of time. So, what is the difference between budgeting and long range planning? Aapki, in comparing a budget with a long range plan, which has more detail, budget is always more detail. Which is done for a longer period of time, long range plan. आपके जो long range plan होते हैं वो normally 4-5 years के होते हैं. Budget is normally for 1 year. Which is more concerned with short term goals, your budget. Now, an ethical note related to unrealistic budgets is they can lead to unethical employee behavior, such as cutting corners on the job or distorting internal financial reports. What is the master budget? The term budget is actually a shorthand term to describe a variety of budget documents. All of these documents are combined into a master budget. The master budget is a set of interrelated budgets that constitutes a plan of action for a specific time period. The company's master budget contains two classes of budgets. One is your operating budgets, are the individual budgets that result in the preparation of the budgeted income statement. So जो आपके operating budgets होते हैं, उनको when you use those operating budgets, you come up with the budgeted income statement. These budgets establish goals for the company's sales and production personnel. In contrast, financial budgets focus primarily on the cash resources needed to fund expected operations and planned capital expenditures. Financial budgets include capital expenditure budget, cash budget, and the budgeted balance sheet. Illustration 21.2, which is the individual budgets included in a master budget. Now this whole is your master budget. ये आपके complete master budget है. And the sequence in which they are prepared, the company first develop the operating budgets. अब आप देखेंगे this whole is your master budget. अब इस budget में it has parts. सबसे पहले आपके you make operating budget, उसमें आपका sales budget first पे आ गया. Then you have the प्रोडक्शन बजट. वो प्रोडक्शन बजट जो है वो बेसिकली आपके ऑब्वियसली आपकी डायरेक्ट मटेरियल का अलग बजट होगा जो आपने पढ़ा है जॉब ऑर्डर कॉस्टिंग वगैरह में. डायरेक्ट लेबर का अलग बजट है. फिर आपका MOH मैन्युफैक्चरिंग ओवरहेड का अपना अलग बजट होता है. इन सारे बजट्स को when you use, then you make selling and admin expense budget, and from that you are able to make the budgeted income statement. Once you have made the budgeted income statement, then you make the financial budgets. वो आपके capital expenditure budget, cash budget and budgeted balance sheet होता है. So now this is the end of lecture number 23. Starting from lecture number 24, we will start with the concept of operating budgets.